Hey everybody, today I've got another question and answer video. Since there were so many comments on my visits to the trial gardens as well as my tour of Panicle Hydrangeas, I'm going to zero in specifically on comments that came in on those videos. Starting with this one from Peggy Ann. She writes, "Kid in the candy store video for sure. Thanks, Corey." And it is true. I don't think video can convey my enthusiasm and excitement for a visit to a trial garden. I can't sleep the night before I go because this is my big chance to see a lot of these plants for the first time. Also helps me make a lot of decisions into what plants we're going to carry, and also kind of gets me to nix a couple plants as well that I would have maybe been looking forward to carrying and then decide, nope, after seeing it in person, not going to do it. So it's very helpful. And that ties right into this next comment from C Shields. Says, "Love to see the side-by-side comparisons. It also helps us understand how different each variety can be and how many there are. I think the beginner gardeners miss this point. I certainly did. It took me a long time as a gardener to understand that if I saw someone was growing Angelonia, for example, and I wanted it too, I couldn't just go to my garden center and get whatever variety of Angelonia they sold and expect it to be the same. So many varieties with different growing habits." And that's what I learned on my very first visit to the trial gardens. I thought I kind of had a big knowledge base, but once you're seeing these in person and seeing how they're growing and seeing them side by side, it completely changes your perspective on how you view plants and how you evaluate plants. So for me, it was really an incredible experience to do that. And it also, every time I visit a trial garden, I walk away from it feeling a little bit more knowledgeable, a little bit more prepared to come on videos like this and talk to you about these plants, and also helps me really decide which plants I think are going to be best for our customers. So it is an incredible experience for me. So, and that goes to our next question though, because KR writes, "How do I find trial gardens around me? I know some aren't open to the public. It's such a treat for the eyes." It is a great experience, but it is true. Most of the trial gardens that I visit are not open to the public. That said, I think a lot of them, if you contacted them and you had a garden group of a certain size, they may let you come in for a tour. Sometimes they do accommodate that. So that's something to think about. But in general, they're not going to be open for the public. And I understand why, because gardens that are open to the public require a completely different type of maintenance and systems in place, because the public are much rougher on plants than like professionals that will be coming through. And also a lot of these places, they sell plants to growers and retailers like me. And so they really do want to just focus on us, let us have the space and be able to really make our choices, because the more time we spend there, the more likely we are to buy from them. At least I think that's the theory. And I think it's very effective, because visits to trial gardens completely influences what plants we end up carrying. I can say that without any hesitation. So that's kind of that part of it. But if you are in an area that is close to a university or a botanical garden, there is a chance that they might have a trial garden. So you might want to search the internet or call one of these places and just find out if they are doing any kind of trials or if they have a trial garden. I've been to a couple different ones. So I've been in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowa. And that's a mix of botanical gardens as well as university trial gardens. And it's very interesting to visit those places, because they're quite different from the trial gardens, like the commercial trial gardens, because I think a lot of times the plant companies probably send them plants, because I'll notice these same plants appear at all these places. And so that's usually those plant companies giving like their new varieties or varieties that they're trying to really promote that year. And so it is a good opportunity to see those plants, but it is not necessarily the best place to see like comparisons where you're seeing lots of, say, impatiens all in a row. They might have a series and they're showing you how the series performs, so all the different colors of one series, but they won't have like some of the trial gardens where they're going to have 15 or 20 different series all on display. It's pretty incredible when you're there and you see all those, and it definitely helps influence your decision on what you're going to have for your type of business. But a lot of times the universities don't have something that extensive. That said, they will often have, where they're doing, I guess, showcase, where they're showcasing all these different varieties. So you have different varieties side by side. They do some of the comparison ones. So you'll see, this petunia, that petunia, that petunia, and so they have a series of those. And then they also will often have display gardens or display containers as well. So that can be nice to see, because they're actually, I guess you'd say, landscaped kind of varieties. Thing that frustrates me when I go to the universities and some of the botanical gardens is there's a lot of inconsistency between the beds, and I mentioned this in the Michigan State tour video. Some of them, like every single plant will have a name and information about that plant in one bed, but then in the other bed, there's not a single sign to be found. And I find that frustrating, especially at a trial garden, because, you know, sometimes I really want to know. And that does bring me to one of the plants that I was asking about. There was this kind of big thistly looking plant, and someone had told me what it was. Here it is, JF Aquatics, and one other person also let me know. The spiky plant is a cardoon, very closely related to artichokes, very easy to start from seed, and gets to that size from seed first season. 5 to 8 feet in the second year if it survives the winter where we are. So I looked it up, they are zone 6, so they probably wouldn't make our winter, but it's a pretty impressive plant. Thank you for giving that answer to both people who gave me the answer. So anyway, but it is frustrating when I'm in a place and I basically have to go to my internet friends to find out what the plant is. So that, and then also some gardens, like every plant is looking perfect, and then I go to another patch and clearly there's either a watering or fertilizing issue. It's very frustrating. I think it might have to do with the programs that are organized around there. So like, is it the interns are done for the season and so that garden is kind of put on hold, or I don't know. I don't know exactly what's causing that, but it's very strange to have two beds next to each other, one looking fantastic, one looking very poor. And I know the plants that are in there, so I know it's not that these are just bad plants. That's not the case. So it has something to do with the care and the upkeep of those. So I'm not sure what's going on there. But that said, it still is a really good place to go, whether it's a botanical garden or a university trial garden. A lot of times they'll have the AAS, that's the American or All-American selections. A lot of times those are seed varieties that they'll have out there. I like going to those because they're showing you kind of the best of the best in a category. And so a lot of the choices that I make for my seeds, I go to AAS and just pick those because I know that they've been trialed all over the country and they are very, very good at that. And a lot of them are at the universities as well. So yeah, finding them can be a little bit of a challenge, especially if you're in a more remote area. But if you are going to an area with, near a big university or botanical garden, check it out. I definitely recommend it. Dominique Cook has a similar question. Where can you find the newer varieties? My local shops usually only carry proven winners. And that is the one downfall, I think, with like me talking to you about all these new varieties, is that there isn't an easy way for you to find out who locally is going to carry those. Like Proven Winners does have a retailer locator on their website, but it's not going to tell you if they're going to carry that specific plant that you want. And I guess if you're a big retailer, they do have an option for that. But for places like ours, we're not set up for that. So, you're never going to know exactly what each place carries and how you're going to find that one plant that you're looking for. So that's a little bit frustrating. That said, if there's a plant that you're very interested in, and right now we're at the end of August, this is when most of the retailers and growers are putting their orders in. So this is the time for you to contact your local nursery or greenhouse and say, hey, there's this variety that I'm very interested in. I was hoping you might be interested, or you might be able to carry it. It might influence their decision. Now, you have to realize that they might not be able to, because the way this business is, or this industry is, it can be tricky. So like, we're a grower retailer, so we don't do like the propagation from cuttings and from seeds and that kind of stuff. We get ours in as these little tiny plugs, and then we transplant them and we take care of them with annuals, it's at least 2 months before we would put them out for retail. With perennials, trees and shrubs, it could be anywhere from 2 months to 2 years before they're available to the public for sale. We have the opportunity to be able to have a really broad range of choices because these plants are really small, and we're able to that's just the time when you can get a lot of choices. As the plants get farther along, those retailers, like if you're just a retailer who has what they call finished product, that means basically it comes off the truck ready to sell. It's in the container, has the tag, the plant's nice and big, and they can sell it right same day they get it. That's a completely different story, and usually the sources for that, they have to really compress their inventory or the number of plants that they have, because they have to basically maximize it for kind of efficiency, both cost-wise and just it reduces the amount of mistakes, and it also makes growing a lot easier when you have more consistency. When you have 30 different varieties versus 2 different varieties, it's a lot harder to grow 30 different varieties. I know this from experience. So that's kind of how that works. So if your greenhouse or nursery, they really only carry the finished product, their choices are going to be very slim, and they're also going to be at the mercy of their distributor. So they might not find out until a couple days before their shipment's supposed to arrive that all their red petunias have been canceled. They had crop failure or whatever. That could be really frustrating because they don't have any time. Their goal was to be able to sell that for the weekend, and they find out just a couple days before that they're not going to be able to have that plant. They can't find another version, or they can't go through and just order more from somebody else. Meanwhile, for us, like if we get to that point and something gets canceled when they're little plugs, usually what we do is we get most of our plants in, like we'll say the first week in March, and then second or third week in March, we kind of have our backup order. So we order from one of our companies. And that's the other thing. We order from like 4 primary companies for our plugs for our annuals. Then we have like 3 other companies that we kind of supplement with. That isn't necessarily very cost effective because it means that we've got all these plants being shipped to us and freight is a lot higher. So it's a lot better if you consolidate all with one company because your freight's going to be a lot lower, and also you can usually negotiate a better price if you're having a bigger order. But we love having a lot of variety and a lot of these new varieties. So in order to be able to get everything that we want, we have to order from a whole bunch of different places, and that's not necessarily an option for a lot of places. So they can't just say, oh, we're just going to order. And that's the other thing. You can't just say, oh, I just want one tray, 50 of those petunias. You usually have to have an order minimum, so that can be several thousands of dollars. Also, before you can order from these wholesale companies, you also probably have to go through a credit application, which means you have to have references and proof of your bank accounts and that you're a legit company and all that kind of stuff. So it's not just like, oh, ordering from Amazon. There's a lot more involved in there. So understand if you do contact your nursery and they're like, we can't do it. It's probably because it's just too complicated a process, or it wouldn't be cost effective. Those plants would be so expensive for them that they probably would be losing money if they tried to carry them, if they were just buying like one tray of something. It just doesn't make any sense. So, and then other places too, they've been growing the same plants for 15 years and they're not going to change. And hey, that's another kind of the other end of the spectrum from what maybe we're on. So it takes all types for this industry, but chances are if they're growing the same varieties for the last 15 years, they know how to grow them very well and they're very efficient at it, and the plants should be pretty good, I would hope. So anyway, I'm getting off topic here. So let's see what the next question says. Are ball plants sold online? So I went to the Gardens at Ball, which is a plant company, one of the very big ones. They are available online, but they're not available from Ball. So different companies may, like online retailers or online sellers might have them, but that's not associated really with Ball. So that would be just a case of doing a search and finding them, but it's not the best way. And Ball plants are in pockets. So there's certain areas where they're really popular, kind of like Proven Winners too, where, this area, they're highly available. In other areas, there's kind of a drought of those types of plants. It's just kind of how it works. Here's another person who says, that last question was Marlene Egan, and this one is Pokir. And they write, I like to plan my garden during the winter, especially my planters and hanging baskets. Do you have a list or some I could use? Love your collection. Amazonas cockatoo for me did much better in the shade. So I didn't think of growing that petunia in the shade. Maybe you're in a really hot, warm, bright area. Never know. Anyway, so we do have like our list of plants or our catalog online. We keep it up there. People could download it right now and then we'll replace it when the next catalog is available. It's not a print thing, it's just a digital thing that we do. So if you wanted to see our plants, you could go on there. Doesn't necessarily help you though if you want to go to your local place. The chances of them having what we have, they may have some, they may not have others. But I would say if you're trying to get ideas and inspiration, I would go to the Proven Winners website. Under their like gardening ideas section, they have their container recipes and inspiration. So that's a good place to go just to get ideas. You don't necessarily have to just use Proven Winner plants to make it work. So that would be something to consider, definitely going in there. And in general, like a lot of people use Pinterest boards, and also there are different types of combos that are available that are premixes. So like Mix Masters is one, Durabella Quick Combo, and try to think some of Trixie. If you did a search for Trixie combo or Mix Master combo, you would find some of these pre-made mixes that some of the companies put together, and that might give you some ideas as well for things that you might want to put together. So that would be my suggestion there. Terry D comments, holy cow, I'm gonna have to slow this video down with my 2025 notebook handy. Who knew there were so many varieties available? And there are a lot. And I want to make sure that you guys know that when you're watching YouTube, there is an option for you to slow the videos down automatically. So whether you're on your phone, a tablet, computer, there can be a little, it's like the settings little area for each video. You can click on that and it'll bring up where you can change the speed of the video. You can go to half speed, or if you want to speed it up, if I'm a little boring, you can speed it up. And it just kind of speeds up the sound or slows down the sound depending on how fast the video is going. So you're still catching everything, but you don't have to be, it'll either slow it down so you can follow things more closely, or it'll speed things up so you can get to the end faster. That's also where you can change the resolution. So a lot of times if you're in a spot where maybe you don't have a great internet connection, your device is going to automatically like lower the resolution. It's going to pick the lower resolution video for that. And there are times when you really want to see the high res, so you can force it to pick a higher resolution video. It might take longer for it to download, or you might have some buffering issues, but it does give you a chance to really be able to see things a little better. So those are two settings in YouTube that I would recommend you check out, because it can make a big difference. Instead of having to do all the scrubbing or back and forth trying to see things or hitting pause all the time, that can be a much easier way by slowing down the video or by increasing the resolution. Because a lot of times if you're trying to maybe read a tag or words that are on there, it would help to have a higher resolution. So that's my other suggestion there. Wickwer M writes, I'm curious, what happens to all those annuals they have at the end of the season? Well, we're in Michigan for these trial gardens, and that means once we get frost, those annuals are going to die. Now, it is possible that they may take cuttings off of some of those plants, or they may move them in, but I think for the most part, they just kind of let them run their course. They're out there, from early June all the way until frost, which, and I don't know that they're always giving them lots of fertilizer at the end of the season. This is their prime time for showcasing those plants, so they might not look as good towards the end of the season, but I think they just kind of let them go. It's kind of like the plants in your yard. They're seasonal, so they're going to go through their cycle. But I think those plants probably get a lot more foot traffic and a lot more eyes on them than something in somebody's backyard. So they're not a complete waste. And remember that those are a living catalog for those companies. So it's available only for that short time, and then those plants are done for the season. And there are plants that some of you did not like user said, I don't care for black flowers. To me, summer is color. Delight wrote, Space Age Triton, I don't understand the appeal of these spotted and speckled plants, including the night sky petunias. They look diseased and unhealthy, laugh out loud. So it is true, like everybody has their preferences, and that's the other nice thing about the trial gardens, is that lets me see them. I mean, I tend to be a little skeptical of some of the variegated and yellow leafed plants, because we are so programmed to be looking for those characteristics in plants that maybe need iron or are unhealthy. So when I see them in a trial garden, I'm always like, oh, that poor plant, that poor glamouflage petunia, to me, they always look a little bit sick. And that's just because I've been programmed to think that way on those. But anyway, hey, we all have our preferences, and hey, there's plenty to choose from. So thank goodness for that. But it is fun to kind of hear when people have a negative reaction to some of the plants, because it is true. There are plants that I see that I'm like, mm-mm. Now I tend to, when I go through the trial gardens, I'm usually looking for varieties that either I feel that I can talk to you and give you some information about that maybe might be different than what you might already know, or that you've seen someplace else, or I might choose a variety that you've never heard of before. So that's usually my goal. That's kind of how I decipher which ones I'm going to put in. Also, I tend to lean heavy on the ones that I know we're going to carry, but every once in a while, actually this season, I think there's quite a few that I talked about in the videos that we're just not going to be able to carry. We don't have enough bench space to have all the plants that I want to have. So I've had to let go of some of those plants, but I still talked about them in the videos. So it's kind of, that's how it works with this kind of stuff, where I fall in love with a lot of things, but I can only hang out with a couple of them. Colleen Ritchie writes, Corey, whatever happened to the Bonfire Elite Salvia? I believe it is the tallest of the red salvias. I always bought it every year, and now I just can't find it. It's approximately 36 inches tall, and it was one of my favorites. And that is one that it's not available from any of our growers, so I'm not sure, and it's not one I'm really familiar with. But that's one of the things that does tend to happen, like certain varieties just kind of get phased out. Now, it is possible there might be seeds available out there, so you might want to keep an eye out in the seed market. I don't know, there may be places that are carrying it, but I haven't seen it in any of our sources, so I'm not sure. And it is always a mystery when there's a plant that people absolutely love and it's not available for anybody. And there's certain plants that people are always coming in asking for, and we're like, not available, don't know where to get it. It's kind of strange how that can happen, where a plant can kind of completely disappear. Don't know how that happens. And I heard from Evelyn D., beginner gardener here, bought the Canary Angel Wing Begonia this year. This is the wax begonia that has the really bright lime leaves, and it did great in my shaded area. The chartreuse green lights up the otherwise darker part of my yard. Wonderful plant, and I was just thinking today I would buy this one again. Love the tours and all the ideas you provoke for next year's garden. Thank you. And that is a really unusual one. That's one that we haven't carried, and I'm always tempted to have it because that leaf color is really, really bright. It is one that does trigger my does it need iron brain, but actually because it's a waxy leaf, it doesn't look quite as much like I feel with the petunias and some of those. So anyway, that's just my hang up, not yours. Now for the comments that came in for my tour of Panicle Hydrangeas. Budget Gardening writes, what a wonderful video showcasing so many beautiful hydrangeas. I never knew there were so many different kinds. Wow. Okay, I featured 24 different types of Panicle Hydrangeas, and the truth is that only scratches the surface. There are so many more out there. That said, the ones that I did showcase, a lot of them were newer varieties, so they are improvements or have characteristics that are improvements over some of the older varieties, but there are tons more out there. I did not even, like I said, scratch the surface on what's out there. And that does bring me to this other question, or this other comment from Maynard Greenhouses. This was a great video, Corey. Customers get so confused, as well as us growers, to all the new additions every year. Have you tried Macrophylla wedding gown? Starts off white and turns red in the fall. Rivals all panicles in intense fall colors. So an alternative to the Panicle hydrangeas as far as one that changes colors, and I'm not familiar with that one, and I tend not to be very familiar with a lot of the Macrophyllas simply because many of them are zones 5 and 6, and so they don't tend to do very well in our area, especially like even the zone 5s. A lot of times we just get that late frost or too cold in the winter that the buds freeze out, so we get beautiful leaves but we don't always get flowers off of them. So I'll never be an expert on Macrophylla hydrangeas just because of where I'm at. However, I do love them, and I wish, I would love to be able to do like a display garden or do, a showcase of Macrophyllas, but I don't think it would be fair for me to say like, hey, here's the endless summer crush, but it doesn't have any flowers right now, but it will later on. They're just never going to be at their best for us. Although that said, there are people around here who have little microclimates where they do fantastic in. So it's really hit and miss around here. So I don't really get heavy into those, but if I did, I would definitely try that wedding gown one. So that's one for you guys to check if you're in a warmer climate than I am. And then also, she writes, I do the Moonrock hydrangea, but you're right, it's not well known, but it should be. And it is really nice. Those panicles are absolutely huge, and they're long and narrow, so they kind of have more of that kind of, I always think of like a haunted house candle with the, wax candle that's kind of all craggy and stuff. It's a very interesting one. I do like it. Let's see, got another one from CMash, and it says, such an awesome tutorial on panicles. I particularly love the overview chart at the end. We'll definitely save for future reference. Many thanks for doing this. Would it be possible to do a similar video on smooth hydrangeas? So two things here. One is that chart I did in the description of that video, put a link to that, just that image that you can just go to, download it. You could even download it to your phone. I'll also put a link to it in this video. So if you want to have that for reference in the future, you're able to go to it. You can download it, like I said. So I wanted to put that out there, but then also showcasing smooth hydrangeas. So that would be the hydrangea arborescens. So the Incrediballs, Annabelles, Invincibles, those types, the ball-shaped ones. And I would love to be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to do it in grow bags. I've tried growing them in grow bags, and I think they just need more water than I can give them. And the grow bags tend to also breathe a little bit, so they lose water a little faster. So they're not quite as drought tolerant as, say, the Panicle variety. So I would have to do it in the ground. And so I am tempted to maybe start an area with those arborescens in the ground, especially because next year the flowerful arborescence hydrangea is coming out, and that's supposed to have more flowers and sturdier stems than the Annabelles, and some of the other ones. So I'd be very curious to try that. So I'm kind of still weighing, like, where could I put it, number one, and will I have time in October to actually get those planted, because it would be end of season when I would get those in. So I'm tempted and I'm thinking about it. So it won't happen this year though. And some people did ask about a Macrophylla tour, and like I said, I'm not going to be able to do that here, but the Southerners Northern Garden, he has planted tons of Macrophyllas, and he's doing a comparison. They're in a part of his garden. He's gonna be doing updates, so he does have one video. I'll try to remember to put a link to it in the description. So I would recommend starting to follow that, because you're gonna get to see some of the plants in there. He's especially fond of the Starfield right now, so that'd be one for you to check out. Kim Kelso writes, great video, thank you for showing all the options. I'm in northern Indiana and would like to add some early bloomers, 5-foot range. Do you have a favorite? Okay, so if you're looking for an early bloomer, you can't beat the quick fire, and the little quick fire probably is going to be in the size range that you're looking at. So that one does bloom really nice and early, and it gets really good color, but it is that lace cap. Some people don't like it quite as much as the more mop head varieties. So if you really want early blooming, Bobo's a great one. And then the other, and that one stays pretty much in that 5-foot range. The tag says shorter. A lot of people who are in warmer climates than us say that it does get more like 5 feet for them. And then the other one that I would look at would be the Quickfire Fab. That one, nice early bloom on it, great color on it. In fact, incredible color on it, but it probably is going to get over 5 feet on you, I have a feeling. So maybe not the best option, but really, I mean, look at those quick fires, and the Bobo are probably going to be the ones that are going to suit you. If you really want great color, it's not an early bloomer though. I was thinking about the Limelight, Little Lime Punch, and that's the dwarf version of the Limelight that turns really incredible color, but I wouldn't consider that one an early bloomer. So sorry about that. Early Evolution's a nice one, but that's more like 2 feet, so that's gonna be a little short for you. So yeah, keep an eye on the Quickfires and the Bobos. Well, thank you guys for watching. I hope you got a little extra insight from watching this Q&A. I do want to give a special thank you to 2 people, Ronald Giard and Sharifa. They did do a super thanks on some of my videos, and I did put that towards the Love a Lot pink hydrangea that I planted behind my garage. And that's an important one for me, I think, to plant out, because it's not one that gets much attention. Nobody's really heard of it. And so I do want to make sure that I'm growing it and able to talk about it, because it's very interesting to me and it does get people's attention. So I want to see how that one does and be able to talk even more thoroughly about it. And the interesting thing is that the folks who developed that hydrangea, they had written me and said, hey, if you're ever around, I think it's Avon, Ohio, come on by and we'll show you the original plant that came from. So that would be kind of interesting. And I will be out in Cleveland, hopefully later on next month, so that's not too far away from there. So maybe I'll be able to get to see the original Love a Lot pink. And I have had a pretty crazy travel schedule. So my August, just to give you a snapshot, it was Posen in the Lower Peninsula, Michigan, then up to the Upper Peninsula, then to Milwaukee, then to outside of Columbus, Ohio, then over to Chicago, then back to the Upper Peninsula, then the Lower Peninsula, then I zigzagged around downstate Michigan to the different trial gardens. So it's been pretty crazy on that front. And then for next month, it's scheduled to be just as busy. I'm supposed to be down in Kansas City, then Milwaukee, then Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and then also, let's see where else, Louisville, Kentucky, and Rochester, Minnesota. So lots of moving around, kind of crazy time. However, I think I'm not going to get to all those places simply because my mother-in-law, Pat, her health is going downhill. So I mentioned this in a previous video. She's in hospice, and so we are going through some changes and we are adjusting our schedule for that. And it's a challenging time, but you know, all I'm going to ask from you guys is if we can have your prayers for her to have a comfortable, peaceful transition, that would be very much appreciated. That's all I ask from you guys, is just put her in your prayers. We don't have a lot more time left with her, but she is present. So she still, you know, smiles when she sees me, and we do still get some words out of her, and they are coherent words. So we're grateful for that we still have her with us, because we are seeing a difference. Anyway, I'm sorry, I don't want to get down on this. We talked about trial gardens and hydrangeas, and Pat loved both of those, and she loves watching my videos from those places. So hey, I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. I'm getting off track. Thank you guys for watching. Again, I will continue the videos coming no matter where I am, whether I'm on the road or whether I'm staying close to home. It doesn't matter. I appreciate it, and I will talk to you guys all very, very soon.